Hey, it's Daryl, and I'm just going to do a second version of this video because my previous version was way too long. Mostly I'm going to just critique. I'm going to critique this crazy idea of what they want to do for transport in Auckland, and then I'm just going to rant a lot. I'm going to rant a lot. So if you're in for a rant, I've had my cup of coffee, haven't had breakfast. What happens? I drink my cup of coffee. I don't have breakfast. All that caffeine rushes to my head. It gets exciting. Okay. First, just an overview of what it is. The preferred option. I'm just going to be up in this corner here. It's sort of fun. Preferred option for building. Oh, hang on. Let me translate. In New Zealand, they're going to build the most expensive thing that they have ever considered building. It's going to be $45 billion. 1.5 million people live in Auckland. That works out to, I think, $30,000 per person. Is that right? I don't know if that's maths is good. I'm going to say $30,000 per person. $90,000 per three-person household. Okay? How much does a new electric car cost? You can buy one for $42,000. Okay? So for the budget on this is two electric cars per household in Auckland. Two brand new electric cars, okay? Cheap, made in China, cheapest models of electric cars. It's got like three options. I like electric cars. Okay. So anyway, what the plan is to build the red dotted line, which is an underground railway to serve about 500,000 people who live on the North Shore. Okay. So that's the thing, and the black dotted line, which is an underground road tunnel, which exactly replicates the Auckland Harbour Bridge. People might know the Auckland Harbour Bridge is famous and big. Maybe I can quickly show you the Auckland Harbour Bridge on this thing. See, there's the Auckland Harbour Bridge. That's what it looks like from the top. It looks like a big piece of Meccano. It's 45 metres high for the roadway, about 65 metres high for the top of the arch. It looks like the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but it's in Auckland. And it connects. This plan is to connect the people who live up here. I don't know. It's about 500,000 people. So here's Auckland. Okay, there's Auckland. Okay, it's got 1.5 million people. Okay, I'm gonna say like there must be about 1 million people living in this area here, and sort of a third of a million up here and a third of a million down here. Maybe it's about a third of a million people live on the North Shore. They want to build the $45 billion tunnels to support about 500,000 people. That's crazy, and it goes down there to the Auckland CBD. What have we got in here? Devonport and Belmont. That's where some rich people live in Devonport. They can take the ferry across to go to work. There's ferries there. There's some ferries from Bayswater. We've got this place, Akoranga. Akoranga is the bus interchange that interchanges Takapuna's bus network with the Northern Busway. The Northern Busway is a parallel motorway to the 4-lane in each direction or 3-lane in each direction motorway that runs up the North Shore. That's State Highway 1. It goes all the way further north, and State Highway 1 runs north-south the whole of New Zealand. But in Auckland, it's about 3 or 4 lanes in each direction in most places. And it's used for commuting, but it's also the through transport. We've got this side state highway over here, which is the alternative ring road. If the Auckland Harbour Bridge is closed, which occasionally it is because of severe weather, like in a big storm, they close the bridge, you have to drive around the long way. That makes sense. It's a 45-metre high road bridge. You could get blown off the bridge into the harbour. That would be dangerous. You wouldn't want to do that. They close it because sometimes trucks get blown over on the bridge and they damage the bridge when the trucks hit bits of steel or whatever. Okay, that makes sense. So they want to build. Oh yeah, they're building a central city rail loop down at the bottom of Auckland. It's almost complete. It's going to open in a year's time, maybe. I don't know when it is. Soon. They've been building it for like half a decade, maybe longer. They've been building it for 8 years. Anyway, so there's a central city rail loop. The South Shore, we'll call it, the main Auckland part, has about 3 railway lines that converge on the central city. It makes sense for there to be a central city loop so that the trains can go around and drop people off anywhere in the middle of the city. You can also get on a train somewhere in the city and move around to other parts of the city. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. That was cost $5 billion or something. That was the most expensive thing ever built in New Zealand, $5 billion. Now they want to build one that's 45. I think that's 9 times more expensive. I think that's how maths works. Up in Devonport, you've got rich people who live over here. You've got Navy base, you've got ferry terminal, you've got some historical places. The nice places to go to, cafes and restaurants. You've got Takapuna. Takapuna's got a nice beach over here. Got some nice cafes and restaurants and a shopping mall. A lot of the buses go along the Auckland Harbour Bridge, but when they're on this bit here, they're on a special busway. So you need to know what the busway is. So I'm trying to tell you what the thing is. They're trying to replicate a thing that we already have a busway. The busway was already designed to be upgraded to a railway line later on. They built all the busway with all the contours and altitudes that fit a railway line. So the idea was when the busway gets a lot of use, then you change it from buses to trains. And then you have trains that interface with the rest of the railway network, and then it's a railway network. That's how networks work. You try and make everything matchy-match so that it all works together nicely. So you've got the Auckland Harbour Bridge there. The bus lanes merge into the Auckland Harbour Bridge just here somewhere. Just around here. They merge together. You can see how many lanes are on the bridge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something. It's a peak flow. They moved the barriers on the bridge so that's like 5 lanes in and 3 lanes out, or 3 lanes out and 5 lanes in, and they changed it around on peak. They have these special machines, which maybe that's what this thing here, that's probably one of the special machines. They have these special machines that move the barrier in the middle of the motorway during the day. They swap it over in the middle of the day to change the peak flow of the bridge. But we have the bus lanes. See here? Here's the bus only lanes. It's a 2-direction busway on quite a lot of it. There's somewhere where the thing wiggles around and the buses split and they run their own lanes. I think they go one way on this part because you're heading towards the bridge on that lane. But up at Akaranga, which is here, I'll zoom out so you can see where Takapuna over here. Akaranga here is where the bus lanes, see the northern bus lanes there? I think that's where the directionality changes. And at this point, you can see there's arrows going in both directions on the bus lane. The bus lane has its whole own road. So even if there's motorway congestion, the bus lane is totally separate and only has buses on it. So it's called a bus rapid transit or whatever they want to call that. And that makes sense. There's feeder buses that go around these suburbs and pick up people and drop them off at these bus interchanges that are built like train stations. They're literally built like train stations so that you can put railway lines on them later on. So it even has a pedestrian overpass so that when there are train lines here, you can walk through the bridge to get to the other side. And the platforms are set up like a dual directional railway platform, which they designed it when they made it like 15 years ago. That was designed to be upgraded to a train. And so here it is, and it runs through, and at all of these intersections, it has its own bridge that passes over so that the buses or trains don't interface with the other surface transport. And it goes all the way up, following the motorway through these suburbs, and it comes up to this part here, which I never remember what this is called. There's North Shore, I think it's like the rugby league stadium over here. And it comes to this place where there's a giant shopping mall. That makes sense. That's sort of where it goes. I'm sure there's some other commuter buses that go further, but once you get to here, you're kind of at the northern edge of Auckland. There's some other parts of Orewa and this part. This is like a long drive. This is like 30-40 minutes out of the CBD by the time you're up there. Anyway, so the idea is to build a new tunnel snaking under all of these suburbs that exactly replicates the underutilized bus lanes. That's crazy. So now I'm just going to move into the ranty rant portion of the thing. That's crazy to do this because they already built all the infrastructure. You see, you could, if you want to make it so that you build this as a railway, if you convert the bus lanes to a railway, which was the design, then one thing you may want to do is build a little tunnel from here. So here where this estuary is, you could build your tunnel portal here somewhere in this, somewhere in there. You build your tunnel portal to railway under here to come into the CBD down here, where the city rail loop is under this part. This is where all the high-rise buildings are. See, this is like the beautiful high-rise buildings by the sea kind of harbour view there. And you bring it in to interface into that. You could build that. It'd be about $5 billion to build this railway connection in through there, okay? And that kind of possibly could make sense. The other project that they want to do is they want to build a tunnel under these suburbs here, which is Mount Eden and Sandringham and Dominion Road. They want to build a tunnel under this and then bring it through down to the airport, because this idea that people might want to take a tram surface and call it tram, light rail, trams. It's the same thing, different names. Tram just seems like 1800s and light rail seem modern. It's the same stuff, conceptually the same idea. They want to build that thing. It's like about a $7 billion project as well. It will take 15 years to build or something. We don't even know if we're going to have planes in 15 years time. They might have something else. Anyway, I do like to rant, so we'll put that aside. But anyway, okay, so and so the thing is they want to build it up through here. These people, they have ferries already to go across the CBD. It doesn't take that long. My personal thing is you should build a gondola, like a thing up in the air with steel cables, like a ski lift. Think of the ones which take 8 or 10 people, 15 people per capsule, have a big gondola, it goes across. You see, that would make sense to go from Auckland over to Devonport with a gondola, because it's pretty, it's real nice. You get the pretty views of all the high-rise buildings and the pretty views of the harbour and all of the boats and stuff. And then you come over to Devonport where there's pretty volcanic cones. You'd be able to see all of that from up in the air when you go across. And in Devonport, there's a lot of nice cafes and restaurants where you can go out for a coffee. That's something that tourists would want to do. What tourists don't want to do is go for a walk on a bridge. So this is part of the project. They would take one of the lanes of the bridge and convert it into a active path, which means walking and running and riding a bike, okay? I've worked on the Auckland Harbour Bridge. I worked on the very top of the arch of the Auckland Harbour Bridge, fixing some technical equipment up there. It's really noisy. It's also 60 or 45 metres high at the road level, 60 metres high where I was working. It's windy and cold. It was windy and cold on a nice summer day. It was windy and cold. In the winter, it would be horrible and dangerous. You could die of exposure on a rainy, snowy afternoon. It doesn't snow that much in Auckland. It's not normally that cold. It rains in Auckland. Under the climate change models, it will rain more than ever in Auckland. Who wants to be at 45 metres out in the rain with all the noisy trucks going past at 80 kilometres per hour in the next lane over to... Have you ever stood by a motorway? Okay, all these politicians, so now we're ranting, okay? All these politicians, you need to go and stand on the side of a motorway. Put on some orange high-vis overalls. Put on your hard hats and stuff. Go and put on your safety glasses because a stone in the eye is very dangerous. Go and stand on the side of the motorway for an hour. Like right by the traffic. Close, just over the concrete barrier at the side of the motorway. And listen to it and enjoy the noise of all the trucks and buses and cars going past. Even if they were electric, they would still be noisy. Because moving tons of steel at motorway speeds is a noisy thing to do. That's noisy. Nobody will ever enjoy walking across Auckland Harbour Bridge on a lane right beside the motorway. Even if you built another bridge exactly right beside the existing bridge, which was another crazy idea, $650 million. Nobody would want to do it. It's not enjoyable. Only the crazy people who like to commute long distances on a bicycle would be into that. It's about 1,000 people in Auckland. About 1,000 people in Auckland would like to ride their bike over there. Nobody else wants to do it. For everybody else, build a gondola. Everybody else, gondolas are nice. They're real quiet. Have you ever been in a gondola? Have you gone skiing? Have you just been to Switzerland or something? There's a gondola in London. I went on it. It's nice. It's quiet. You get a good view. It's nice to take photos. It's quiet. It's quiet. It's quiet. That's very important. It's very important. When you're in a busy city, it's nice if you have a transport system that's quiet. It's nice. What else? Yeah, you could build a gondola over there. The people could ride the gondola to work. You set the price very cheap. You don't make it $65 each way. You make it about $3 each way. Everybody would want to use it at $3 each way. Tourists would want to use it. It would be a no-brainer. If you went to Auckland and there was a gondola that went over to the North Shore, and it cost $3 each way, you would definitely take it. You'd just take the ride there and then take the ride back, even if you didn't stop at the cafe at the other end for a cup of coffee. You'd do it because it would be spectacular. I went on the gondola in London because it cost £3. It cost £3 to cross it. It cost the same price as taking the Metro underground train, the same sort of distance. But I took photos. It was nice. It's an industrial area. The place is ugly, but it's still fun. It's very fun to ride in a gondola. I think it is. I think it's more fun to ride in a gondola than it is to ride a bike. I like going skiing because you get to go on the chairlift. It's fun. They built a new gondola at the ski field nearby. It's fun to ride on it. It's fun. It's fun. You just do it because it's fun. What else? $45 billion. So what could you do with $45 billion instead? Well, you could build a surface. You could build a surface tram. You could build 2 surface tram lines. You could build 20 surface tram lines. You could build 20. You could think of where are 20 tram lines we'd want to build in New Zealand that we could do for that much money. You could build for $45 billion. You can build 20 surface tram lines. Okay, so where could you build them? You could build the one on the North Shore. Make that as a normal railway. You could build that tunnel for $5 billion. You still got about $35 billion left over after you do that. What else can you do for the remaining $35 billion? You could build a tram line through Sandringham and a tram line through there. That would cost about another $4 billion on Dominion Road. You could build a tram line that comes all the way down to the airport because that's a good idea. That would cost you another $2 billion. You still got about $30 billion left. What else can you do? Well, you could probably build some other tram lines. You could build some tram lines to Howick. You could build one that connects the railway line down here at Sylvia Park. You could build a tram line out to Howick. You could build a tram line from Howick down to the southern suburbs down here, down to Manukau. You'd still have $25 billion left. What else could you do? You could go down to Hamilton. You could go down to Hamilton and you could probably work out where the main flows of commutes are, and you could build a tram line along the busiest bus route in there. That would cost you about $2 billion, okay? And you've still got $20 billion left. What else could you do? Yep, you could electrify the main trunk railway line from Waikanae to Palmerston North. That would cost you about $5 billion, but that would be completing electrification of the whole North Island main trunk railway line. You could add commuter trains between Palmerston North and Levin and Waikanae down to Wellington. You could all that. That would cost about $7 billion. You've still got $15 billion left. What else can you do? What else can you do? You can go down to Christchurch and you can look at where all the railway lines are and where all the existing railway stations stations are, and you could build electric trains and put electric trains on that. That would cost like $3 or $5 billion, and you've still got $10 billion left. What can you do with $10 billion? With $10 billion, you can buy all the hospitals in the country, a new MRI and a new dialysis suite. All the hospitals, so that anybody waiting for a medical scan or dialysis treatment can have that. And you still got $5 billion left. And with that $5 billion, you can fix the guttering on the schools in Wellington that have leaky guttering. That will cost you about $50,000, and you've still got $5 billion left. You can buy every school kid a bicycle in the whole country. In the whole country, you can buy every kid in all of New Zealand a bicycle so they can ride a bike to school. That will take a lot of SUVs off the road at commuter times, which then they'll be out of my way, so that when I'm coming to your business to fix your stuff at work, I won't be held up. And that means that getting your stuff fixed at work, and for every other tradesperson in the whole country and everybody else who drives places to fix stuff for jobs, they'll get there quicker, and it's going to cost you less. You'll save money. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. There's much better things to spend $45 billion on. Don't understand it. You can paint all the cycle lanes green or red or something so that people won't be confused about what's a cycle lane and what's a road. That's a good idea. With $1 billion of that, you can build a bunch of new cycle lanes. Don't build them at the road level so that cars can just easily drive on them. Build them at the gutter level. Have the curb on the other side of the cycle lane so that people know what's explicitly a cycle lane and what's explicitly a road. It's not that hard. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're planning, look at how to design a cycle lane on YouTube. Watch 200 hours of YouTube videos. You'll understand how to build a cycle lane. It's not that hard. They've been doing it in the Netherlands for a long time. Don't build underground train lines where the population's not 7 million people. I've thought for a long time, because of climate change, if climate change is really a real thing, what happens is that New Zealand gets wetter and Australia gets drier. That will mean that they'll have more droughts in Australia. We'll be able to grow more food in New Zealand, maybe. That would mean that it would be quite logical for a lot of Australians to move to New Zealand. If half the population of Sydney moves to Auckland because of climate change reasons, then that's a good idea. Build an underground railway. If there's 7 million people living in Auckland, we'll need underground railway lines for sure. But you don't need it when there's just 500,000 people living on the North Shore. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make sense to spend $45 billion on building an underground railway line for 500,000 people. That doesn't make any sense. That's crazy, crazy, crazy. $45 billion, you could build a 2-lane motorway all the way to Tauranga. And that's a terrible idea, but it's probably a better idea. You should build a better railway line to Tauranga. If people want to be able to commute between Tauranga and Auckland, build a high-speed train. Build a train that goes 170 kilometres per hour. Do that instead. You can build a high-speed for some tiny fraction of, for about $1 billion, you could build trains that go 150 kilometres per hour that go to Hamilton from Auckland, and people could commute between Auckland and Hamilton. That's a better idea than building an underground railway line for people who live on the North Shore. So what a, we've got some alternatives of what you can, and I'm not saying don't build nothing. You could build that railway line on the North Shore, like I said, and build the tunnel that takes the shortest bit across the gap. Get somebody to study what birds live on this part of the estuary before you tear it up. Okay? What unique sea life, what kinds of things live in this estuary here? Find out what lives there before you destroy it to build the tunnel, okay? Like I think there could be something. I bet there's undiscovered species living here in the mud off here. There's quite a lot of undiscovered species in New Zealand. I've heard some scientists say that they could probably I think this is literally true. There was one scientist who did flippantly say that I bet I could discover a new species in a lunchtime if I just went and had a look in that estuary over there. And the other person was like, go on then. And they did. And they found a new kind of sandworm that lives in the sand. That's something that happened. There was another guy who was he was waiting for his kid who was doing uh, canoeing. I don't know what do you call it. They're kind of like you get 8 people in a long canoe. I forget what it's called. Whatever that's called, the Olympic style rowing. Rowing. It's called rowing. He was waiting for his kid to finish his rowing practice, and he was having a look in the car park down at Petone Beach, and he found new species of plants growing in the rocks in the car park. Just found a new species because he just got out of his car and had a look on the ground, and he was a scientist and could tell a new kind of species that no one had ever described before when he saw a plant that nobody had ever described before. He discovered a new species. There's lots of stuff. Do that stuff. Have a look in the ground. Have a look in the ground before you build a tunnel. Have a look on the ground before you build a new motorway over it. Maybe there's something there. I know that there's special little shellfish and special fish that live in the streams nearby where I live. They built a new motorway. They got some ecologists to check all that stuff out beforehand, and they found the species, and they worked out what little creeks would get diverted during the thing, and they moved the fish and the shellfish to another place, and then moved them back when they were finished. So that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea to do that. It doesn't cost very much. It costs nothing like $45 billion. But $45 billion is just it's an unbelievable amount of money. The amount of cancer treatments and hip operations and knee operations, dialysis machines, guttering for high schools, new carpet and new paint for schools, maybe a better curriculum for some schools. Maybe that would help. Maybe they can teach people how to do multiplication at school. That would be a good idea. If people learned how to do multiplication at school, they would understand how expensive $45 billion is. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. $45 billion, that's insane. That's an insane and crazy amount of money. I don't think they should build this thing. They should consider it for 5 more years first and then not build it. But in the meantime, it only takes 2 years to build a gondola. They should build a gondola across to the North Shore. It's very cheap. Gondolas are very cheap and have very low environmental impact. They run on electricity and they're just made out of steel. All you have to do is build some Meccano towers. It doesn't take very long. The companies that make equipment for ski fields specialize in it. You can order it from them and they'll make it for you. They'll send it over in a kit set and then they'll send the people over to assemble the Meccano and put it up for you. They know how to build it. They build hundreds of gondolas all over the world for all the different ski fields. They know what they're doing. It's proven technology. They understand how it works. It's really cheap. It's really cheap. Way cheaper than roads. It's probably cheaper than cycle lanes per meter and carrying capacity. Not really sure. Cycle lanes can be pretty cheap. That's why it's a good idea to build them. If you ride a bike, for $45 billion, you know how much money that is? You can buy everybody in New Zealand and everybody in Australia a new bicycle. You can buy them a new bicycle every 3 years until the end of time. That's how much money that is. That's a crazy amount of money. It's a crazy amount of money. Oh my goodness. It's $10,000 per person. $8,000 per person who lives in New Zealand. You can buy everybody a new bicycle every 5 years for their whole lifetime for $8,000. You can put the money in the bank and get the interest and use the interest to buy everybody a bicycle. You can buy everybody in New Zealand a new bicycle until the end of time. You could have free bicycle workshops everywhere all around the country where people could get their bikes fixed. The people that can't ride a normal bike, you can buy them like a mobility scooter or a hybrid something. You can buy them something else. You can pay for their taxis. You can pay for all of the people who have disabilities for their taxis until the end of time for $45 billion. You can buy new guttering for all the high schools in Wellington until the end of time for $45 billion. You can buy all the schools new carpet until the end of time. You can insulate everybody's houses. You can put insulation and a heat pump in everybody's house in all of New Zealand for $45 billion, and you'll still have change to buy everybody's solar panels and a battery for their house. Not everybody. Yeah, you'll have change. For $45 billion, you can literally buy insulation and a heat pump and solar panels for every house in New Zealand. I think that's probably enough. $8,000 per person. That's like $20,000 per average household. Yeah, you can buy everybody a heat pump, solar panels, and a battery for their house for $45 billion. You can buy every other family in all of New Zealand a new electric car for $45 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. You can buy everybody all the medical care they'll ever need in a lifetime for $45 billion in New Zealand. I think it must be a lot to run the medical system. Maybe that's not quite enough. You can run the medical system for a few years on $45 billion. I don't know what the medical system costs. It must be expensive. I don't know what else. What else can anybody else think of anything else you can do for $45 billion? It's a lot of stuff. That's half an hour. That's enough. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you watch this much, good for you. That's good. Anyway, I had too much coffee and I haven't had breakfast. I'm going to go and have breakfast. I'll feel better. Have a good day. See you later.